The room fell silent. Nurses paused mid-step. Children held their breath. And then, it happened. The door opened, and in walked Prince William and Kate. Not in glittering crowns, not in dazzling gowns, but in the quiet strength of two people who had come not as royals, but as humans. In that instant, hearts broke across the room, not from sadness, but from the overwhelming weight of kindness and love. For the boy waiting inside, it was more than a visit. It was a dream stepping out of his drawings, a fairy tale crossing into reality. And for everyone who witnessed it, the world suddenly felt softer, braver, and unforgettable. If stories like this move you as much as they move us, then stick around. Go ahead and hit like, subscribe, and share, because the more these stories spread, the more light they bring into a world that desperately needs it. And who knows? You might just inspire someone else to believe in the magic of kindness. The morning sun stretched gently across the rooftops of London, painting the city in pale gold. Inside Kensington Palace, everything seemed as ordinary as ever. Staff moved quietly through the halls, polishing silver, arranging flowers, setting the rhythm of another royal day. It was routine, predictable, almost ceremonial in its calm, and yet there was something different, something unspoken in the air. At precisely 9 o'clock, a phone rang in the assistant's office. Sarah, who had worked with the royal family for years, picked it up. On the other end was Prince William. His voice was steady, but there was an undertone she had never heard before. Urgency, yes, but also warmth, almost trembling with emotion. "Cancel everything for today," he said softly. "Kate and I are going somewhere important." Sarah froze. Important? The calendar was packed. Charity luncheons, ministerial meetings, official appearances. None of it, apparently, mattered more than whatever William had just decided. He didn't explain. He didn't need to. His words carried the weight of something personal, something deeper than protocol. Only moments earlier, Kate had been sitting in their private room holding a handwritten letter in her lap. Her eyes were red, her hands trembling ever so slightly. The letter was from a hospice nurse named Emily, and inside its folds lived the story of an 8-year-old boy named Oliver. Oliver had been battling illness for most of his young life. Machines helped him breathe at night. Nurses helped him walk. Yet, against all odds, he carried a smile that could soften the hardest day. He loved superheroes. He adored fairy tales. But more than anything, he believed in princes and princesses. His greatest dream was to meet one. Not for glamour, not for gifts. Simply to feel brave in the presence of someone he admired. Emily S. words on the page were simple but heavy with hope. "He talks about you every day. He believes in you. He believes you might come." Kate read those lines again and again until the tears blurred the ink. Then she looked up at William, her voice barely above a whisper.
"We have to go. We must." There was no debate, no hesitation. William simply nodded, already reaching for his phone. The palace, usually so defined by order and ceremony, suddenly stirred with quiet urgency. Security officers adjusted routes. Assistants packed bags, not with jewels or speeches, but with children's books, crayons, and a small blue blanket. The kitchen prepared simple snacks, not banquets. Every action carried the same invisible signature. This was not duty. This was love. By 10:30, a black royal car waited discreetly at the back gate. William wore a dark sweater. Kate chose a cream dress, simple, unadorned. No diamonds, no tiaras. They wanted no bearers of royalty that day, only the open hands of two people answering the call of a child's dream. As the car pulled away, Kate held Emily's letter once more. Outside, London bustled with its usual indifference. Inside, she whispered through quiet tears, "I hope we're not too late." William squeezed her hand gently. "Even if we are," he murmured, "he'll know we came." And so the journey began, not as a royal engagement, not as a public spectacle, but as a private mission of the heart. A story written not on calendars or headlines, but on the fragile hope of a little boy named Oliver. The car moved steadily through London, slipping past familiar landmarks, parks, old stone bridges, rows of houses still carrying the chill of morning. But for William and Kate, this was no sightseeing journey. It was a pilgrimage of sorts, one guided by compassion rather than ceremony. Kate sat quietly, the letter still resting in her hands. Every line felt alive, almost as though Nurse Emily had spoken them directly into the car. He dreams of being brave, just like Prince William. He believes a prince and princess could make his world whole again. Those words weighed heavy, not with burden, but with responsibility. William, his gaze fixed on the window, carried his own offering. In his pocket was a folded note addressed to Oliver. Just a few sentences, handwritten the night before. It read, "Dear Oliver, you are one of the bravest boys I've ever heard about. Thank you for showing us what real courage looks like." At the end, he had drawn a small crown. A crown not of gold, but of ink and meaning. This wasn't duty. This was something else. As the city faded into countryside, the pace of the world slowed. Trees lined the quiet lanes. Clouds drifted low, heavy with a kind of softness that makes you lower your voice without even realizing why. Kate opened a small gift bag on her lap. Inside were tokens of comfort, children's books, a toy bear stitched with a tiny crown on its chest, and a little fabric crown she had chosen herself. She smiled faintly. "It isn't real gold," she whispered, almost to herself. "But love is worth more than gold." William looked at her, his eyes gentle. He'll know that. He'll feel it. For years, both had carried the weight of titles, Duke and Duchess, Prince and Princess, future King and Queen. Those roles demanded composure, duty, an endless calendar of appearances. But here, in this quiet car, none of it mattered. Stripped of pomp, they were simply William and Kate, a husband and wife, a father and mother, two people who knew what it meant to hold the fragile hope of a child. And yet, beneath the calm, there was tension. Would Oliver be well enough to meet them? Would their presence bring joy, overwhelm him? These were questions no protocol could answer. Only the moment would tell. The drive stretched for more than an hour before the hospice finally appeared. Nestled in the countryside, Rosewood Children's Hospice looked more like a family home than a medical facility. White walls, flower beds by the entrance, windows glowing with warm light. As the car rolled to a stop, the air shifted. Nurses waiting by the doorway exchanged quick glances. They had been told important visitors were coming, but no one expected this. When William stepped out, dressed not as a prince, but as a man in a simple navy sweater, the silence was broken by the sound of quiet gasps. Kate followed, holding the gift bag in both hands. Her face carried no royal mask, only kindness. Nurse Emily approached, her voice trembling. "You came. You really came." Kate reached out, clasping her hand warmly. "We're here because of you. Thank you for writing." Emily nodded, tears brimming. "He's in room 6. He doesn't know. He thinks today is just another therapy session." Kate's voice softened to a whisper. "Then let's keep it a surprise." And with that, the doors to the hospice opened. The royal titles remained outside. Inside, there were simply guests, stepping into the fragile, beautiful kingdom of a boy who had been waiting all his life for this moment. The hospice hallways were hushed, lined with children's drawings, castles with soaring towers, dragons with wings of fire, and stick figures smiling under bright suns. Each drawing told a story of dreams stronger than illness. William and Kate walked slowly, guided by Nurse Emily, their footsteps soft against the polished floor. When they reached room 6, William paused. He inhaled deeply, steadying himself. "We are not just royals today," he whispered to Kate. "We are visitors in his kingdom." Kate's eyes glistened. She nodded. "Then let's be the kind of guest he'll always remember." From inside came the sound of humming, a child's voice, faint but filled with imagination. It was Oliver, singing softly about castles and stars, the same stories that filled his sketchbooks. Kate and William exchanged one last look. Then the door creaked open. Oliver was sitting upright in bed, a blanket wrapped around his thin shoulders. On his lap lay a drawing, another castle, tall and proud, with two figures at its gates. One wore a crown, the other a long dress. Between them was a smaller figure with a crown of his own. Oliver, at first, he didn't notice. He was busy coloring the grass green. Then he looked up. His crayon slipped from his fingers. His eyes widened in disbelief. "Are you real?" he whispered. Kate stepped forward and knelt by his bed, her smile gentle, her voice warm. "We're real, Oliver, and we came just to see you." Tears welled in his eyes as he covered his face with his small hands, overwhelmed by the sight before him. William sat at the edge of the bed, placing a small bouquet of daisies on the table. "We've heard so much about your bravery," he said. "We wanted to meet the bravest prince in the land." Oliver peeked through his fingers, a shy laugh bubbling through his tears. Kate reached into the gift bag and pulled out a soft blue bear, a tiny crown stitched onto its chest. She placed it gently in his lap. "This is for you," she said. "From one prince to another." Oliver touched the bear carefully, as though it might vanish if he held it too tightly. Then he looked back at them, his voice trembling. You came all this way just for me." William nodded, steady and sure. "Of course we did. You are worth every mile." The boy's face lit with a smile so bright it filled the entire room. He showed Kate his drawings, castles, dragons, and the stick figure royals he had imagined. "That one's you," he said proudly, pointing to the smaller figure. "Because I want to live in the castle too." Kate looked at the drawing for a long moment, her voice breaking softly. "Oliver," she whispered, "you already do." For nearly an hour, the three of them sat together, reading, coloring, and laughing at silly jokes. In that little room, time seemed to pause. There were no doctors, no machines, no titles, only a boy with a crown in his heart, and two visitors who had come to remind him that dreams sometimes do come true. Word travels quickly among children, quicker than whispers, quicker than footsteps. By the time William and Kate had finished coloring with Oliver, the hospice hallways were alive with curiosity. Little faces peeked around corners. Soft giggles echoed from doorways. A nurse tried to hush them, but their excitement could not be contained. William noticed first, the small eyes watching from the window. He leaned toward Kate. "Shall we?" he asked quietly. She smiled, already knowing the answer. Within minutes, the staff gathered the children into the playroom. It was usually a space for therapy, sometimes for laughter, sometimes for tears. But that day, it transformed into something else. Something almost magical. Oliver, seated in a wheelchair, was rolled into the center. The other children clustered around, some in beds on wheels, some with walkers, others leaning on nurses for support. Their eyes were wide, cautious at first, and then wonder bloomed. Prince William sat cross-legged on the floor, a simple book in his hands. "Who here likes dragons?" he asked with a grin. Hands shot up. Voices chirped, "Me," in unison. He began reading a silly story about a dragon who couldn't breathe fire, pausing for funny voices, making faces so ridiculous that the room erupted in giggles. Even the children who hadn't smiled in weeks found themselves laughing out loud. Meanwhile, Kate knelt beside a small table with paper and crayons. A girl named Lily sat beside her, shyly watching. "Shall we make something royal?" Kate suggested. Together, they began folding paper crowns. Soon, every child had one, some lopsided, some colorful, all worn with pride. Kate placed one gently on Oliver's head. He sat taller in his chair, his grin unstoppable. The room became a kingdom, not of marble halls or golden thrones, but of laughter, paper crowns, and the kind of joy that makes walls disappear. And then came a moment no one expected. William tapped a spoon against his glass, calling the room to stillness. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small gold pin shaped like a crown. "This," he said, holding it up, "is for someone very special, for the bravest prince we have ever met." He turned to Oliver, gently pinning it on his shirt. The room went silent. Nurses wiped their eyes. Children stayed, wide-eyed. Oliver looked down at the tiny crown glinting against his chest, his fingers trembling as he touched it. "Thank you," he whispered. "This is the best day of my life." Kate knelt beside him, her eyes shining with emotion. "No, Oliver," she said softly. "This is one of the best days of ours." Applause filled the room. Not polite, royal applause, but the clapping and cheering of children whose hearts had just witnessed something unforgettable. In that playroom, they weren't patients. They weren't defined by their illnesses. They were princes and princesses of their own kingdom, united by joy. And in the center of it all sat Oliver, his crown shining, his smile unshakable. As the day drew to a close, golden light spilled gently through the windows of room 6. Oliver lay in his bed, his new crown pin gleaming softly against his blanket. Beside him sat William and Kate, their presence no longer surprising but comforting, like old friends who had always belonged there. "Are you leaving soon?" Oliver asked, his voice faint with tiredness. Kate brushed his hair back tenderly. "Yes, sweetheart, but we'll carry you in our hearts forever." William adjusted his pillow, smiling. "You've made us proud today, Oliver. You showed us what true courage looks like." Before they left, Kate asked for something. "Would you let us take one of your drawings with us? The one of the hospice as a castle." Oliver's eyes widened in disbelief. "Really?" She nodded. "We'll hang it in our home, so we'll remember you every single day." And they did. William pulled a small envelope from his coat, sealed with a royal crest. Inside was a letter for Oliver. He read it aloud, his voice calm but trembling with feeling. "Dear Oliver, you have shown us what true courage looks like. Your smile, your dreams, your kindness, they have changed the world. You are, and will always be, a real prince." Tears filled Oliver's eyes. He whispered, "Will you remember me even when I'm gone?" William knelt by his side. "We'll never forget you. Not ever." The following weeks carried both heartbreak and beauty. Oliver passed away peacefully, holding his crown pin in one hand, the bear Kate had given him by his side. His family said he left smiling, knowing he had lived his dream. The world soon learned his name. The royal couple shared his photo online, a boy in bed, a crown on his chest, Kate's hand in his. The caption read, "In a world full of titles, sometimes the bravest ones belong to those without them. Thank you, Oliver." The response was overwhelming. Donations poured into the newly created Oliver Fund, raising millions for children's hospices. Letters arrived from across the globe. Children in schools made their own crowns and declared themselves princes and princesses in his honor. Oliver's story had grown beyond a single room. It had become a movement of kindness, bravery, and love. And in Kensington Palace today, one photo remains framed in gold. It shows a small boy with a crown pin and the brightest smile. Above it hangs a simple inscription. To Oliver, the boy who reminded the world how to be royal, through kindness. His legacy endures, not because he wore a crown, but because he carried one in his heart. Sometimes, the most powerful stories don't come from kings or queens, but from children who dream, love, and inspire us to see the world differently. Oliver reminded us that bravery is not about battles or thrones. It's about smiling through pain, sharing joy, and teaching others how to live with heart. If this story touched you, share it. Let Oliver's courage reach someone who needs hope today. And if you'd like to hear more true, powerful stories that remind us of the best in humanity, don't forget to like, subscribe, and join us again. Because sometimes the smallest voices carry the greatest crowns.